Welcome. How are we doing today? I'm John Swallow, president of Carthage, and I'm so delighted to welcome you to our second annual Sports Management Conference, supported by Minnesota Wild owner and parent of a Carthage graduate, Craig Leopold. Let's give Craig a round of applause. Thanks to Craig and others, Carthage has become the second largest private institution in Wisconsin, if you count by full-time undergraduates, and certainly the largest institution that's private in Wisconsin focused on teaching. And I know that we're about to welcome an amazing person from the Bears, and my role as president is not to take a position on the Bears or the Packers or anybody like that, but I can tell you maybe some scores of the team that we're all here for, which is Carthage. So if you look over the last 5 years, almost every private institution in Wisconsin has had one of their worst recruiting years in 10. Not so at Carthage. If you look at the last 5 years and you look at the entering classes, the average private institution is down 4%. Carthage is up 12%. So I don't know about the Bears and the Packers, but I'll tell you this, Carthage is a winning team. Now, we are indeed fortunate to be joined by Kevin Warren, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Bears, and I want to take a moment to review part of his amazing story. He's a veteran executive of 23 years in the NFL, and if we go back, we can see that at the St. Louis Rams, he was Vice President of Player Programs and Football Legal Counsel. Then at the Detroit Lions, Senior Vice President of Business Operations and General Counsel. Then he goes to the Vikings as Chief Operating Officer, 4 years at the Big Ten, and then just last year becomes President and CEO of the Bears. He has many aspects of his resume that will impress all of us here, and he has given back in so many ways over the course of that career. In September 2013, he was named a member of the NFL Committee on Workplace Diversity, and since his arrival at the Bears, he was named to the NFL's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. There's so much to say about Kevin, and I want to say that we're extremely, extremely fortunate to have him with us today, and I want to say that on behalf of Carthage, he's our newest Firebird. So Kevin, I welcome you to this stage and to Carthage College.
There we go. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. Much appreciated. John, I hope you don't mind. By now, the audience should know I'm a Bears fan. So I'll apologize to you, Packer fans, but you just don't give it up. Okay? I know I moved north of the border, but this is where we're at. Kevin, I'm going to begin with the bit of the shocking question, flow through a little bit of the career, want your background. We'll get to the Bears and all the other traditional questions about the Bears towards the end of our conversation. Then we'll open it up for audience questions as well, too. So I'm going to potentially shock the audience here. Kevin and I just recently met. But I was reading an excerpt of a book that my colleague Carter Rockhill provided to me, which provided a background about Kevin and Kevin's story. And as I'm reading this book, I'm reading about Big Mama. And Kevin will talk about Big Mama and his relationship with Big Mama. But when I read about Big Mama's name, I stopped, walked back to Carter, and I was like, "Did you read this book?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, of course I did." Kevin, do you mind sharing Big Mama's full name?
Ramona Padilla, so I think we might be related in some form or fashion. And I say it sincerely. She was from Mexico, and your family's from Mexico. My grandmother was born and raised in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. And so when I was looking at reading your background too, and my daughter has been working on some ancestry issues, and when I saw them, I said, man, we might be relatives or something, so so take it easy on me.
Right. The ticket request will be coming by my family in the back of the room, Kevin, so I'll just apologize now. But it was amazing to step into this story and then see it and then realize a little bit more learning about who Kevin was, right? And knowing what John had read and shared about Kevin's background of being in the NFL, for any of us who have been NFL fans, followed the NFL for a long time, you've seen Kevin around the NFL circles for a while now, so it's been great. Can you talk a little bit more about how everything started, the influence that Big Mama actually did have on your life?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona, and I would just say the scouting report on me, and I'll start on my mom's side because Big Mama was my mother's mother, my grandmother. She was born, as I said, in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, and she met my grandfather at Fort Huachuca, and my mother was raised in Douglas, Arizona, and then they migrated up to Phoenix, Arizona. Big Mama was a maid and worked for many well-to-do families in Phoenix, area. She didn't have a license. She never flew on a plane. She never drove a car, and she was never late for a meeting. And so she was really, really diligent. So I think I blame, and I'm glad I can blame it on her, my clean freak tendencies and attributes to her. But it was interesting, and every family has issues and family dynamics. My grandfather, who I never met, unfortunately, and it's something that I yearn for every single day. My mother came home in 8th grade, and my grandfather was gone, and they never saw him again. And so there's many thoughts that he moved to Los Angeles. Some people think he moved back to South Carolina or somewhere else and started another family. And so this is something that I always, everybody wants to know their grandpa, and I didn't get a chance to meet my grandfather on my mom's side. But Big Mama was a hard worker. She lived on 19th Street in Buckeye. There were some projects in Phoenix, and I was really fortunate to spend a lot of time with her. My nephew and I, because my oldest brother is 20 years older than me, my nephew and I are very similar in age. He, ironically, is a lawyer in Chicago at Chapman and Cutler, but we spent a lot of time on the weekends with Big Mama, and she had a photographic, memory, could do math in her head. English was her second language, obviously, and but she helped to kind of raise us to make sure that we were sturdy people, but the biggest thing, that we were respectful of everyone that we got a chance to meet.
Thank you. Thank you. Kevin, you also, at a young age, had suffered a significant injury. Injury is probably the wrong word in regards to describing it.
Yeah.
Would you mind describing what led to it and then how that helped shape you as well?
Yeah, I was in a car accident at about 10 and a half years old. I went out, my parents both worked, and we just had rules and regulations in our house. This is before pre-cameras, but I would have sworn that my mom had a camera in our house. But when they would go to work in the summer, she would leave us instructions that you get up, you say your prayers, you make your bed, you take a shower, you brush your teeth, you take the dog out, and you take care of your chores and you go play. And it was a normal day in June, a hot day in Phoenix. I did all those things and got on my bike and was going up to a local school to play with some of my friends, and ended up hearing a loud noise and screech, and a woman in our neighborhood who was looking at houses in our neighborhood had lost control of her car and ran over me. And so I went through, it was a journey. I mean, it was a painful journey. I broke my femur, had a compound fracture and wrist, and internal injuries and other injuries. And so I spent a long time, multiple months, one in the hospital, but two after the hospital, after being in traction for many periods of time. I ended up getting put into a full body cast. And that was really, I would say that's really where my life began, because I recognized the fragility of life. how fast life goes, how you can be taken off this earth in an instance. And that's when I recognized that I felt that there was something in the future for my life. I was grateful to have lived and survived that accident. And as I said, I was able to battle through all those different issues. And when I say I've been flat on my back, I have. And I would challenge all of you all to this weekend, try to eat your meals laying down. And so to have to lay on my back, eat my meals, go to the bathroom in a bedpan, and do all those different kind of things, it helped to get my mind stronger and to recognize that you got to enjoy life. And I made a vow that if the good Lord would allow me to be able to make it through this, that I would really focus a lot of my time and energy and effort as I go forward as a child and into adulthood to trying to make the world a better place. And so that's what I've tried to do.
Thank you for sharing that. Kevin, when we started talking about this sports path that you got on, at what point did it start, and at what point did you feel like this is what you were meant to do?
I felt it as a kid. My dad was a great scholar athlete in high school and in college, and even played for a moment with the Brooklyn Dodgers in the American Football Conference. My brother was one of the early, I think the second black scholarship football player at Stanford in the early 60s. A lot of my other siblings. We lived in a very athletic household, and both of my sisters, there were 5 boys and 2 girls, married professional athletes. And so you can imagine with our family reunions and holidays and weekend barbecues were like, we lived in a competitive environment. So I felt all along that I would be doing what I'm doing or something similar to it, although I started off, because of my accident, I started off as a biology major in college. I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. That was my plan, because the doctors who cared for me, I would say, saved my life. And so that was my focus when I went to college. And I would probably say one of the main reasons why I did not become a doctor is that biology labs were in the morning, but as I got to organic chemistry, those labs were in the afternoon and happened to be the same time as basketball practice. And so I really couldn't do both. And then I started to feel more suited toward kind of the business role and even law. And that's how it morphed into that. But I was really focused, and having 2 brother-in-laws who are professional athletes, especially one, John Shoemade, who was a great All-American basketball player at Notre Dame. I owe so much of my career to him, because he would take me on 1 trip a year when he was in the NBA, and I got a chance to meet the person who called the games, and meet the team doctor, and meet the person in charge of marketing and legal and business. And I started to say that there was a career outside of just being a player and a coach, which is phenomenal. And I started to focus on that. So I would say early on, even in once I made the switch from biology to business, I was very focused on making sure I could develop a career, in sports. And I've been so blessed that every step of the journey to be able to build that career, and to me, sitting here today.
So how'd you make this switch? We keep hearing about basketball.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I get out of law school, I practiced law, and then I made the decision that I wanted to be a sports agent. And so I put together a business plan. I raised a little money, and when I say little, I'm talking about $50,000. So I did all the things that they tell you not to do. You start a business, you don't have any clients, you only have $50,000 put away, and I launched, my business. And in some way, it worked. My first client was Chris Zorich, who's a player on the Chicago Bears, and that's one of the reasons why the Bears were so deep inside my bones, is because I was able to attend so many games at Soldier Field. Chris was my first and only client for the first year. And so I was able to attend all of his games at home and some on the road. But I spent a lot of time in the old Soldier Field and just understanding what it means to be a Chicago Bear fan, and that this is a special organization. And now to think back to the history and traditions, started by George Halas and his family, and now operated and led by the McCaskey family, I am truly humbled every single day to think that I sit in this seat here at the Chicago Bears, but it starts with the love and affection that I was created when I was a sports agent. So, the way I started in football is because I started my sports agency in July, college basketball practice really didn't start kind of until October. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to, start representing players in football. I got to do something. So I'll just do that, business. And then I met Chris, but I'll just start the college recruiting in the fall for football, and then I'll get to basketball. Well, I ended up signing, players, working with Chris, and then making some traction and learning the business and learning the collective bargaining agreement that the basketball season came and went. And then I never looked back, and but I've always loved football. I played early on in high school, and then I focused on basketball. But my dad was a football player, my brother was a football player, two of my other brothers were football players. So quite naturally, I loved the business and loved the competition.
Fantastic. That's funny. You pulled the kid out of the south side of Chicago from CVS. For those of you who don't know Chris Zorich, I'm dating myself because I know Chris Zorich pretty well. And the story behind Chris is he was like a miniature Hulk playing defensive line, and he worked out with sewer caps. Those are his weights when he was in high school. So,
and then on the Notre Dame and into the Bears. And
odd way to all of a sudden make a football career for yourself with sewer caps.
Yeah,
but
special guy.
When you got to lift, you got to lift. Kevin, as you transitioned out of the agent business into professional sports, this path opens up for you. You start to expand your roles a bit. You move up. You're in professional sports. You all of a sudden move back to intercollegiate athletics. Let's talk about your time at the Big Ten. The grass did not grow underneath your feet while you were at the Big Ten. You just kept moving. Can you talk as to your philosophy as to why you were so driven to try to shape the Big Ten as to where it is today?
I mean, college athletics is really, special because fortunately, me being a student athlete in college, I know the impact of what college athletics can mean for an individual's life. And I know once I focus on being a student athlete in college, me striving to be the best basketball player that I could do, being around a college campus, working out, being disciplined, meeting people in classes, going to classes, learning, understanding. I got a phenomenal, education, and met people who I still have close relationships with now. I felt that I just had a fiduciary responsibility to kind of pay back college for how it blessed my life and gave me my start. And I think the focus on, we all know kind of what's gone on the last couple years. I just got a sense that there were some really unique opportunities in college athletics. And then to be blessed to be the commissioner of the Big Ten Conference in a very time that was complex, not only in college athletics, but in the world. And I've mentioned it before, I ended up going in September of 2019, spending a couple months as commissioner-elect under Jim Delaney, who had an iconic 31-year career, which was a fabulous 4 months. Commissioner-elect is probably the best job because you're there and getting, integrated into the system. And then I became commissioner on January 2nd of 2020, and we all know what happened to our world in March of 2020. It just got flipped upside down. So just dealing with issues on college campuses, COVID, things that were going on in the world from a health and wellness standpoint. You're talking about an election year. And so I just felt that, we had a platform in the Big Ten, some of the finest institutions in the world, to be able to deal with issues on race. And we started basically a coalition and did some trip. We took a group of Big Ten student athletes and coaches and administrators to Selma, Alabama, to learn about civil rights and walk the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and to think that there was a group of individuals who actually walked from Montgomery to Selma. And so we were able to teach about that. We were focused on mental health and wellness. And then we were able to do some good things together from an expansion standpoint, from a television standpoint. And it's enjoyable now to watch the Big Ten and to watch it evolve here, in college athletics. I'm still a huge college football fan. I'm a huge college basketball fan. I'm a huge college athletics fan. And I'm so blessed and grateful for the time that I was commissioner of the Big Ten Conference. It was a challenge, but I really I really enjoyed that time.
But I'll tell you, I'm going to go back to the point you raised about your timing in COVID. COVID was probably the largest global impacting incident in our lifetime, in a manner in which, growing up, we had heard about all the other related things, right? SARS, swine flu, you name the number of similarly related versions, but when COVID hit, it was very different. As a leader of a major intercollegiate athletic conference, what did you prioritize? What became the major points for decision making for you during those moments?
I think I prioritize, which I always do, is people, is the health and wellness of our student athletes, and not only physical health, but the emotional and mental, spiritual health. That was the priority, and I think, you know, in college athletics at that time, you know, it was interesting to watch these universities kind of just surround themselves around the student athletes, and because these young people, you know, I'm always sensitive about, especially college student athletes in the Big Ten. They perform at such a high level, is that you presume that they've had so many more years on earth, which they haven't. They're young people, and I still believe this. One of the things that my focus then was and now is to make sure, let's allow young people to be young people. This is a complex world we live in, and adulthood is going to be there soon enough. And so I try to, if I have one word to the young folks in here, is embrace being a young person, you know, embrace relationships. And I just sit here, and now as you get older in life, you get more sentimental, you get more reflective, you get more thoughtful. But you know, I look at it out of this window here, and I look at this, you know, beautiful lake, and I hope you all take the time, you know, when people say take time to smell the roses, my message to the students here at Carthage would take time to look at the lake. And I would take the time to be able to do it, because this is absolute, you know, beauty, and there's something special about water. And so many times the world we live in right now, we're conditioned just to kind of get on to the next meeting, the next class, the next semester, get to your job, to start working, to get married, to have kids, to do all these things. And as you get older, you realize all those things are going to happen in due time, in a manner that makes the most sense. But make sure you don't rush through this experience. This is an absolutely world-class university. You got great professors, great leaders, great support. And I also want to take a moment, we're talking about support, just thanking Craig Leopold. We need to give him a round of applause for everything that he's done. But I would say take the time to really look at this lake and build relationships. And I think that's one of the things that, when you say what was I focused on, I was focused on relationships and the health and wellness, especially the mental health of young people.
I'm starting to feel even more and more related to you as you talk, because if anybody follows me on my social media pages, they have seen numbers of pictures of me taking pictures of the sunrise on the lake.
It's amazing.
It's very calming, and it's wonderful to be out here. At your time at the Big Ten, the expansion efforts that were undertaken and are now in place, you know, you have audience members in this room that are definitely old school, remember original Big Ten, look at the schools that were in there, and then we added places like Nebraska and Penn State and Maryland, Rutgers, and now we're adding obviously USC, UCLA, it is Oregon, it just keeps going. Can you talk a little bit about the specific schools themselves? What drew you to those types of institutions as to being part of the Big Ten?
I mean, I think one of the things that made it very clear to me before I went to become commissioner is really the focus on the academic platform that the Big Ten has, being members of phenomenal research platforms and the academics. And so I think, you know, all the schools that the Big Ten have added under Jim Delaney's leadership, under my time as commissioner, under Tony Petitti's leadership, have really been focused on that combination of academics and athletics, and so I think that's one of the cornerstones of the Big Ten, and it's a great great combination of institutions that also have a high degree of athletic capabilities, and so again, and not only do I watch football and basketball, but I watch a lot of the other Olympic sports, and I just enjoyed my time. It's something like today, and because we're so busy doing our jobs on a daily basis, but there's something soothing about coming to a college campus and this beautiful environment at Carthage College, and then when you add it on the lake, I mean, this is really special. So if you see me sometime in the next couple months just walking around campus, just ignore me. I'm just trying to get my mind right. So, but this is a really special, beautiful environment, and I think that's one of the reasons why you all have had such great success here of educating our next group of leaders, not only in sports but in business and in life.
Much appreciated. Most people would probably just pass you by and be like, that's just some student's dad walking around campus, and
with the orange tie on, yeah.
John's been there too. Sometimes we help with move-in, and then somebody's looking at us like, why is this dad helping my kid with move-in? I'm here, and we're like, no, we work here.
Yeah, right.
We're just helping with move-in. Given your time transitioning out of the Big Ten, Ted Phillips, you've succeeded Ted Phillips. Ted Phillips was an icon in Bears history. He had been there for decades. Can you talk about any words of wisdom Ted may have shared during your transition over to the Bears?
Yeah, I would say Ted is a really special person. Interestingly enough, when I was Chris Zorch's agent lawyer, Ted and I worked on Chris's contract before. So that's why it was when I walked into Hallis Hall after the press conference, I felt like I had been there before. It was the older building, but so many of the faces were there. So I had been there before, but I just owe a debt of gratitude to Jim Delaney. I mean, you think about it, my last two jobs, I've replaced one individual who was a commissioner of the Big Ten for 31 years, and then I came to the Bears, and Ted Phillips had been there for 40 years. And I would say there's a certain art that is needed to replace someone who's been an iconic leader. And fortunately, I think what has helped me to be able to do it is I'm the youngest of 7 kids. I was raised in a very disciplined family, and I think my parents, being raised in that household is what helped the transition under Jim Delaney to the Big Ten and Ted Phillips at the Bears helped to go smooth. And because I always look in, and I got a chance during my career to watch leaders, because I always I'm a very curious person. I try to be observant. And so I've watched leaders all the way from my first job having a paper route, as I watch people replace individuals in transition. And some leaders have done it incredibly well, and some leaders have left a lot to be desired. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was to do it in a manner, because it's one thing to exit and retire from a job, but it's another thing to make sure as you transition as a leader that you do it the right way. And so I was really focused on that. And so as far as Ted, what you're talking about, I'm really grateful that he's been a phenomenal resource. I mean, anytime you spend 40 years in one business to understand it, he's a wealth of knowledge. He was good to me when I was in the NFL and working for other teams, that he's been there. He's still there for me now, and I really do appreciate it. He's a selfless person, and he is one of the most unselfish people that I've ever met. He loves the Bears. He has great respect for the McCaskey family, and he loves the city of Chicago. And it's one of those ones, and you can feel it with people. Some people may say they're in your corner, and they're not. Ted is one of those ones that he doesn't have to say he's in my corner, because I know he is, and I'm just forever and eternally grateful for the support that he helped and the transition. One of the things I have to commend George McCaskey on under his leadership, and Ted, the transition here to Chicago was flawless. It's the best that I've ever been associated with. And once I accepted the job in January, although I was transitioning out of the Big Ten and finishing up expansion and some of the media issues, we set up a regular cadence where I was at Hallis Hall a couple days a week. The materials they prepared, the way they was organized. So when I actually came in full time in April, it was no ramp-up time needed. So they were very thoughtful, which George McCaskey and Ted both are very thoughtful people in the way that they, set it up. And so I'm grateful to them for a lot of reasons, but I'm grateful from a transition. Because I found really how you transition to a job really sets the tone of your success during your career there. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been able to get off to a fast start, is because they really leaned into the transition. So I'm grateful to both of those men.
Actually, you're jumping right into my questions as you keep talking about the points of what are almost priorities, but also experiences, right? You transition, most people start to think about what's going to change. Existing employees start to worry about what's the new leader going to do different. Can you talk a little bit more in depthly about how did you handle that? How did you come in and say, this is what I want to look at, this is what I want to see, and then make decisions associated with this is what we're going to do?
I got some great advice, and I've been blessed with some phenomenal leaders, but individuals like Dick Vermeil and Ken Chenault, who was the CEO of an American Express for many years, is that one of the things that I heard from leaders that I respect, that they told me over and over, is be yourself. So many times you get a new person coming in and they're trying to either tear down what the person built before them, but stand on those individual shoulders, show a debt of gratitude, and be yourself. You got to do it, your way. But also respect the history and the tradition of the Bears. That's something I'm very mindful. You think this is a charter NFL franchise. When you think about George Papa Bear Hallis, that's why I wear his pin every day on my suit, just as a reminder of what he was able to do. And not only from a football field standpoint, people know about the T formation, and he was the first person to have assistant coaches in the press box, and have assistant coaches employed full time, and all those different things. But even from an innovation standpoint, that he was able to do from a league, revenue sharing. I think today, how long? He over 100 years. We're still, the NFL has become very successful from a business standpoint because of that revenue sharing. So there's no disparity in markets. So, based upon innovation, and so for me, I wanted to make sure I honored the history and tradition of the Hallis family, McCaskey family, of the Bears, of all the players and coaches who had worked there, the feeling in the city still about the '85 Bears, and then how do we make sure that we build it now as we go forward in the context and contents of innovation, and kind of creating that environment. It starts with football. You got to have a great football team and build a great football team with a long-term perspective. Build your staff, and then continually build on creating an environment for a new stadium. But do it in a manner that if George Hallis came back, that he would say, yes, if he were living now, this is how he would operate. And that's something, I have his picture in my office. I look at it multiple times during the day. I look at his statue coming in the building and going out of the building. And I ask myself, kind of, how would he approach this idea? So I'm really mindful that the Bears are different. They're unique. They're a charter franchise. The city of Chicago, I think is the greatest sports city in the country. There's a lot of history and tradition. You got the beautiful lake and architecture and all these different things that are come together. And so I'm going to pour every ounce of energy that I have to make the Bears a really, really special organization. But the foundation is already set.
There's a lot of us in the audience, as we just learned earlier, that are very happy to hear that. We're especially even happier that a guy who used to claim he owned us is no longer in our conference anymore.
Yeah.
That's going to help as well too, I think. So, will the Jets be on the schedule anytime soon?
You know what? I haven't looked that far ahead, so I'm sure they will at some point in time. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Hot issue. This is the issue. You get this question everywhere. I'm going to give some background to this that hopefully you'll appreciate as well too. A gentleman, a colleague of mine just met locally, our new mayor, Mayor Bogdala, wanted me to tell you hello. For those of you who don't know this, you're getting to know a very personal side of Kevin. But Mayor Bogdala shared a story of meeting Kevin out at Iowa City, where his daughter went to the University of Iowa, and saw Kevin eating. He knew who Kevin was, walked up, introduced himself to Kevin, and Kevin said something along the lines of like, you got to try these onion rings. and Mayor Bogdala was like, no, that's okay. We're going to go back and sit down. And Kevin was insistent about the onion rings. He's like, no, these are great onion rings. And so the mayor says, hello, love the onion rings. I know he was going to try to be here today, but he was very happy about that meeting. But the mayor did say, as I joked with him, I said, I plan to ask Kevin this question. Have you looked at any of the open property just north of the state line for a potential stadium site?
Love that. I love that. I spend so much of my time, working on the stadium, but I do balance, stadium, balance football, balance just culture and environment. And that's a project we have spent a lot of time on, but it's awesome. I've been blessed to spend many years and many hours on US Bank Stadium in Minnesota, and now to get a chance to create a new home for the Chicago Bears. It brings the best out of you, and eventually, we'll figure it out. We'll get it done. And but it really is. I never thought to be blessed to actually have a chance to work deeply involved in two stadiums is unique for someone's career. And so I don't take it lightly, and I think about, what will to create that environment that the Chicago Bears fans absolutely love.
Yeah, it's amazing the projects that stadiums have become today. I was joking with some of our earlier speakers about the fact that Carter and I had the opportunity to be in Barcelona with our graduate students, and Carter and I got the opportunity to attend a Barca basketball game. And I swear I was in a 1970s version of an old basketball stadium at a small Division I institution. It just happened to be in Barcelona and be European basketball. You talk about like taking me back, and the poles were in the way, there were minimal bathrooms. Today's stadium, what do you envision for today's stadiums? What do we have to have as part of today's stadiums?
Well, you need to create an environment because there is a gravitational pull for people to watch the game in a very comfortable environment, whether it's their living room, family room, basement, whether it's their favorite restaurant or bar. And so we need to create that environment that can emulate that same feeling that you have with really good food, really good beverages, great sight lines. But one thing about a stadium is, even compared to watching it on TV, one thing about a stadium is it is really special that when you're able to get 60,000 plus people together, the energy that is created about it is, special. And there's so many games during my career in the NFL that I can look back and remember, just the feel, of the crowd and the noise, the sights, the sounds, the smell. And so I just want to create in a stadium that's very innovative, forward-thinking, but creates an environment where people are saying, this is a great place to not only watch a football game, but it'll be, because it's a multi-purpose stadium, that's a great place to watch a concert or see your kid graduate, or to go to a basketball game. We hosted the Final Four US Bank Stadium in Minnesota. But to be very thoughtful of all of those different opportunities. But it's something special, like I said, about getting this room of people together. Bringing people together is really is spectacular. So as we even work through the ideas and the ideation and the design and location and all those different things, you want to do it in a very thoughtful manner, because a stadium can become a heartbeat of a city. And because what it does, it brings people together. And I can't tell you the number of people that come up to me in Minnesota and say, I remember fill in the blank game. Or, I came to a game and it was the last time that I was with my mom or my dad or my, grandparents. I got and I get letters all the time from fans that they've experienced a death in their family and their son or daughter love the Bears and they want to come to spend time together. So it's a great project. It's great for an organization because it pulls people together. It's great for a city. You think about the number of people that we work on, and creates a lot of jobs. And now there's so many opportunities to host, for us to bid for a Super Bowl and a Final Four and college football playoffs and all those other events that go on that require size and space. I'm looking forward to the challenges ahead as we can continue to proceed forward and have communication, thoughtful discussion with our business and political leaders. But I've enjoyed every moment working on it here in Chicago.
That was the fastest I've ever been eliminated from an option.
You're not.
I'm going to circle back to some of the things, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. I'm going to go back to asking, because a lot of what you said today I will remember and take away. Can you give kind of two takeaways? One, top one or two things about what would you recommend young people need to focus on? You talked about, relaxing, take the time with the lake, and then the next thing relative to that is future leaders. What do they need to focus on?
I think it's all similar. I think one, to be curious. I mean, you have to be curious. You read something, and if you don't know the answer to it and you think about it, go read a little bit more on it. I would just say a curious spirit, a great work ethic, to operate with integrity and fairness. And I think the biggest thing is to think outside the box. I mean, some of the things that we enjoy, whether it's electricity or a lot of things we enjoy were created by individuals who colored outside the lines. So I would just encourage, that to be a Bastiak. It's I mean, there's some great artists and you can be Monet and there's so many artists who I love. But every once in a while, you need a Bastiak who can color outside the line and make you take a step back and, take a double look, and then you learn to grow, into it. So I just encourage our young people, one, just to enjoy the journey, take time with the lake, build relationships, be curious, slow down, be good to yourself, love yourself, and be creative, be diligent. And also just think of, be yourself, be just authentically who you are. And there's so much. I look at this room, some of the students I've had a chance to talk with, there is so much talent, in this room. And I'm so hopeful for the future for our young people. I love young people. I love the talent. And I'm hopeful at my age that to look at these next couple generations as far as what we can do as a society. But we need to also get back to loving each other and being respectful and recognized regardless of our political affiliations and color and background and race and religion, that we're all the same. And we all want the best for our families, and we just need to make sure, and especially that's why I'm so hopeful with young people, that there's a certain kind of special panache they have to make this world a better place.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions. I'm going to reserve one question for the end as well, too. So, questions?
So, my first question, I have two questions, actually. My first question is, with you just recently becoming president and CEO of the Bears, you've been talking about the tradition, how you were an agent for your first client play for the Bears. And does that play a role with you when you went for the job? When it became available, and is that also what you're trying to envision, trying to keep the Bears Stadium at the lakefront? And my second question is, can I have a picture with you?
Yeah, you can always have a picture with me. And I just think one of the things that, as I just said to you all, to be authentically you, is I want to make sure that the Bears remain authentically the Chicago Bears. There's something special. Bears fans are special. I mean, all NFL fans are special, but if you've been to a game at Soldier Field, and during the interview process, during my interview process, I went online, I bought tickets, I bought a parking pass, I went to a game, and it was during would have been the 2022 season. It was when they played the Eagles at home, and that was a nice breezy day. It was chilly outside, but I took my daughter and a couple of her friends. We parked, we walked, and one of the things that struck me was in the section that I was in, there were kids there all the way from probably 5, 6, 7 years old to individuals that are 80 years old. The Bears had been already eliminated out of the playoffs. It was a very cold day, And I just saw that, tradition, and to hear them sing Bear Down and really embrace it. And there's just something magical about this franchise, and I just want to do everything I possibly can to be the authentic leader here, make sure we honor the tradition, but also bring some innovation to it, and be everything that this organization can be, not only on the football field, not only with a new stadium, but in the community. We can be a change agent, in the community. And so, the things that are on my mind always, I read a study recently, I think it had been done a couple years ago, that said that I live in Streeterville downtown. From Streeterville, 9 miles south, and there's a 30-year age disparity in lifespan. And those are things that I always want to focus on, is what can we do as a professional sports team to be able to create an environment to make the world a better place, to impact young people in education and give people hope, put people to work, all those kind of different things. And those are things where I spend time on. So yes, I would say yes to both of your questions, and I'm just honored to be in this position. And you think about it, for the last over 100 years, you had George Halas, you had Muggsy Halas, you had Michael McCaskey. I mean, you had Ted Phillips and me to sit in this seat as president of the Chicago Bears, and so I take that very, very seriously.
Before we get to the next question, I was going to mention that you would love to hear more about our Moonshot for Equity. At some point, somebody will pick you up on that as well, too. Other questions? Let's go right here.
When you were on Hard Knocks, and it was obviously like you were the cast, and it was part of it. How did that, when you got selected for being your Hard Knocks for the season, how did that do with with you, Rick Caskey, and all the other managers?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Hard Knocks was a positive experience. I mean, and we leaned into it in regards to making sure that we had a good working relationship, with NFL Films and HBO. And I think what people came across is the fact that running these sports franchises is much more than what happens on game day. There's a lot that goes into it. And even for young people, that there are a lot of jobs that exist. And you recognize that our players they're young men. I mean, they're young individuals, incredibly talented, but they're young people. And so I thought, it allowed people to look inside, kind of look behind the curtain of the Chicago Bears and the operations, and the beauty of the history and tradition, as we've talked about, exists. And so I thought it was a positive experience, for us. And it was interesting, after all the individuals from NFL Films left, like the next day, it was like really quiet. I mean, it was, and you didn't really recognize the number of people, but they were first class. NFL Films, HBO was first class and professional, and so it was a positive experience.
Great. In the black shirt and glasses.
There were a lot of opponents to publicly funded stadiums. I just wanted you to talk more about the economic and community impact that a stadium could have, and with your prior experiences in Detroit and Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, from prior experience in Minnesota, I mean, you think about when US Bank Stadium opened, they were able to host a Super Bowl, they were able to host the Final Four, concerts, all the other community benefits here. I mean, you think the number of jobs of any new stadium creates, the increase in tax base. It really does make a difference. I mean, I think I read a report recently in Las Vegas last year that the economic impact was over $1 billion, during that period. And then what ends up happening, then they turn around and get USC and LSU, to play in that kind of the Labor Day game. It becomes a magnet for activity. Some sports, some entertainment, some in business, some in operations, and I believe stadiums give people hope to that we have that we have an opportunity to build something. That's what construction does. I mean, even, you think in this room, I know maybe I'm the only one, but when I drive by a construction project, I always slow down and look, whether it's a stadium or not, because you want to know, what businesses are going there. Boy, that's a cool building. I want to see what's going to look like. Who's the architect? What's the construction company? Man, that adds it. I mean, and you want to be associated with neighborhoods that have construction, because construction is another way of saying that there's progress and there's hope and belief. And so my first job was a paper route, but my first job as a senior in high school, in between my freshman year in college and then for multiple years in the summer, was on a construction site. And so I got a chance to really see that you would go see a piece of dirt or a building, and they would take the building down, and it didn't really look like much, and then a month is something, and then 2 months, and it was always interesting. I remember we worked on an apartment building in Scottsdale, Arizona, before I went off to the University of Pennsylvania. And I was worked for a concrete company, so I was the one that kind of had to grade the ground. And before I left to go back to school, we had the concrete poured and some of the frames. Well, then I go back to school, and then I come back like 4 or 5 months later, and boy, it's starting to frame out. And then I go back and I come back, and then it's a building. And then that summer when I come back, people are living there. And I thought back, I remember when I was on my hands and knees with a 2x4 grading the ground to get them to prepare to pour to concrete. Now there are families that are living in these buildings, and so you recognize the power of construction, the power of buildings, the power of progress, the power of hope, and what it actually does.
We have time for one more question. The gentleman in the white t-shirt in the middle.
It's hard for me to hear. Will you repeat that?
Taking over for Ted Phillips. What were your initiatives associated with taking over for Ted?
Yeah, I think the initiatives were, one, get to know everyone in the organization, to create an environment that was built upon tradition, history, but innovation, but also excellence. To build upon the fact that to be a champion in the NFL is difficult. So you need people coming together, you need people with belief, you need people who are willing to work hard, and also create an environment where you kind of fostered creativity for people to come forward. And so it's gone fast. I think I've been there about 17 months now. We've been able to accomplish a lot. We're just starting to be able to do it, and I consider myself so incredibly blessed every single day to be able to walk into Hallis Hall, look at that statue of George Hallis coming into work, going out, and to watch the building of not only a football team, but the building of a culture and building of a new stadium is really a blessing that I'm grateful for. So I appreciate you all being here today. I really do.
I want to thank everybody for being here. We try to prioritize our guests' time, so Kevin's time is up. I want to follow up with one last question. I'm not sure in your role if they allow for any type of moonlighting. Perhaps you're thinking about what the next step is in terms of post-CEO, President Job of Bears, a little bit more fun, relaxed job with the young people. Any interest in adjuncting, potentially?
Yeah,
teaching a class?
What we should do is I should come up here and teach a couple classes. I've taught during my career, but we should have I don't even know what they call it now, but maybe I can substitute teacher.
We'll work on the title. We'll work on the title.
We'll operate like a food truck on the lake or something. I'll be able to do that. But on a serious note, you all are truly blessed. It's been so good to meet you. You're talented. Just stay curious. Be good to yourself. Take time for yourself. Take time to look at this lake. Dream big, and you're blessed to go to such a great college here. So soak it all up. develop relationships and continually strive to make the world a better place. And I'm just telling you, thank you. You all thank me. I want to thank you all for, again, restoring hope in society. And I know our future is in great hands. So God bless you all and have a good night.